So Pokemon Pocket's newest set releases on December 17th, this Tuesday. And there's some things that I think people have missed, information that's sort of hidden away, and some interactions with the new cards that people don't quite understand. So I want to get into it in this video, explain some of these things, show you some information you might have missed. Be sure you guys like and subscribe. I'm going to be covering the new set as soon as it drops. Ton of videos, ton of deck lists coming your way, so stay tuned. So this first bit of hidden information comes from the description, and you can see here that the Mythical Island expansion features over 80 cards, includes 5 new exciting Pokemon EXs, 5 new trainers, and gorgeous immersive arts. It also says that Mew and Celebi are powerful Pokemon EX ready to add extra magic to your collection. So we know we're going to get a Celebi EX, we know we're getting a Mew, and we know we're getting an Aerodactyl. We don't know what the other two are. We're going to go over and review the Mew and Aerodactyl a little bit more in depth, and I'm going to talk about what I think Celebi is going to look like based on past cards from the real TCG. So the first card we're going to look at here is this Mew EX, and I've seen a lot of people very confused. Something you have to realize about the Pokemon trading card game is way back in the day, cards didn't used to say exactly what they did. And in an effort to make the game more accessible, more easy to learn, they changed their design thought process. And every card now says, it tells you exactly what it's going to do. What do I mean by that? Mew EX's genome hacking says choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. So let's say you use Mew EX and you want to copy Charizard's attack. Charizard's attack reads, discard 2 fire energy from this Pokemon. Mew EX's genome hacking is going to copy that attack. It's going to check to see if you have any fire energy. If you have fire energy, it's going to discard them. If you don't have fire energy, it's just not going to discard anything, and the attack's still gonna go. The damage and the effect are two completely separate interactions. They have no impact on the other. The only time they do is a Pokemon card will specifically say, discard X energy. If you cannot, this attack does nothing. So genome hacking, unless the card says something like that, like this attack does no damage, this attack does nothing, genome hacking's gonna work on it without needing those extra energies. That's how the main Pokemon game has worked for the last 15 years at least. We have no reason to believe that that's not how Pokemon Pocket is going to work. So yes, Mew EX is as busted as everyone is saying it is because of that interaction. So what can we do with Mew EX? Well, as mentioned, Mew EX is going to be fantastic against Charizard. Mew EX is going to be fantastic against Mewtwo EX. I can see this card being included in basically every deck. I don't think it fits into Pikachu because of Pikachu's requirement for lightning Pokemon on the bench. It would just be too muddy to play the Mew. You'd be capping your Pikachu at 60 damage, and you're probably not going to be able to bench the Mew after you're done attacking with the Pikachu and build up to that 3 energy. I just don't see it happening, so probably not going to fit into Pikachu, but any other deck that sees Mewtwo or Charizard as a threat, yes, this card is going to go into it. It also, sadly, works very well in Mewtwo EX as well. Mewtwo EX now has a much better Charizard matchup. Mew EX does get, it is a Psychic type, so it can be accelerated to by that Gardevoir. So you can go from a 1 energy Mew EX to a fully powered Mew EX in 1 turn and knock out your opponent's active Charizard. So Mewtwo's getting a slight debuff. A slight nerf in the fact that Mew EX exists, but it's also getting a slight buff because it can honestly take advantage of it the best in certain matchups. So yeah, but either way, Mew EX, insanely powerful card. It's going to be around forever. This is going to be a tech card we always have to include. There's never going to be a just standalone Mew EX deck. But it will be in almost everything. Next, we have the Aerodactyl EX, 140 HP, Primeval Law. Your opponent can't play any Pokemon from their hand to evolve their active Pokemon, and Land Crush, 1 fighting, 1 colorless, 80 damage, and then 1 retreat, weak to lightning. This card, its ability is okay. It feels more like an annoyance than anything. It's going to maybe come into effect at during some games, but as far as a reliable locking your opponent out from evolving, it's not really going to be that. Again, if anything, it's just going to be a slight annoyance on your opponent, which is better than not having an ability, right? It's better than not having one. And then its Land Crush attack doing 80 damage is pretty good. I would have loved this to maybe just do a straight up 100 for me to think it's better. It has the biggest problem being that it evolves from Old Amber. You can't search Old Amber out with Pokeball. So it's going to be very, very difficult to find the Aerodactyl pieces in order to get into it. But maybe that's just fine enough. Maybe it being a late game attacker is okay. You know, maybe this just takes the role of Marowak EX being a consistent 80 damage attacker. Who knows? I could see it being in some, I could see some fighting decks revolving around Aerodactyl as the late game attacker. We just go with a Primeape Aerodactyl plus the new Marshadow we're going to get to. Either way, fighting is getting a lot of new tools. There's going to be a lot of things to explore on what is the best way to play fighting, but I think fighting is definitely going to be getting better. So next I want to do a little bit of speculation and talk about the Celebi EX that's going to be coming out. And I'm going to start this off by showing you that obviously they don't mind borrowing effects from the real TCG. This is the Mew EX that is currently in format in the Pokemon trading card game. And look at this attack. It's literally the exact same attack. Genome hacking. Choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. 3 colorless energy. So clearly they are not afraid to borrow cards from the real TCG, and I could see them doing that with Celebi. Celebi has had some very unique effects, very, very powerful effects throughout the history of the trading card game. And I'm going to show you the 2 that I think are the most likely. So the first one we're going to talk about is maybe we get something like a Celebi Prime. Right now, grass types are pretty weak. They need something else. And from what I can think, probably the best way to do that is energy acceleration. Venusaur just takes a lot to get powered up and it doesn't do a whole ton of damage. Realistically, for Venusaur to ever be good, you would want 2 Venusaur set up. That's almost never happening in a real game for multiple reasons, but I could see Celebi having an ability like this. Forest Breath. Once during your turn, if Celebi is your active Pokemon, you may attach a grass energy from your hand. In this case, it would be the energy zone to one of your Pokemon. I could definitely see Celebi being a form of constant energy acceleration. Maybe it has a very low HP stat to make it a little bit worse. I could see it going down all the way to 110. If it had 100, it'd be pretty bad to get knocked out by a Giovanni Pikachu. 110, I think, would be the sweet spot for it to be just squishy enough that you really don't want it in the active spot for too long, but while it's there, it can build up energy very, very quickly. So that is the first thing that I think we could see a Celebi do. And the next one I think we could see, which would be very, very cool, is, if we had something like a time recall ability. So Celebi, you know, it's future past theme. It did something like that in the games, right? You went to the past to get Celebi in like Heart Gold Soul Silver. I don't really remember, but it has some sort of time theme going on. Time recall says each of your evolved Pokemon can use any attack from its previous evolutions. That would be another just fantastic card to have in the game. It would be something that unlocks a whole bunch of options if they plan around it. As of right now, you know, you're probably never going to want to use that base Pokemon's attacks. Always the evolutions have some sort of better attack. But if they decide to make a deck or make cards in the future work around time recall, I could see it. I think this one's much less likely. I don't think there's enough just card pool in the game for this to be something they go with. I would much rather put my money on the Celebi Prime thing, but it is something to consider. This could happen. Okay, so now we will talk about the Tauros, and Tauros is a disgusting card. 3 colorless energy, fighting tackle, does 40 more damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon is a Pokemon EX, this attack does 80 more damage. That is a 120 damage swing on a splashable colorless Pokemon. You can fit this into any deck that has damage output problems. The first one that comes to mind is Arbok Wheezing. I could see Arbok Wheezing pivoting off of the Wigglytuff thing they've been doing to Arbok Wheezing, 1 or 2 Tauros, and 1 Mew EX. That way, against Pikachu, you now have an answer to it that's a single prize. Tauros is just going to be that late game, massive damage output. And plus, you combine this with Wheezing. If you hit with Wheezing one time and then go into a Tauros, it's going to knock out almost every single EX in the game. So this Tauros, like, the damage here is so good. 120 is so big for a basic Pokemon to be hitting. It's got 2 retreat costs and 100 HP, so it is a little bit squishy. It's probably going to get knocked out back in 1 attack. Depending on the matchup, might be 2. Either way, this is a very, very good deck, very, very good card. I can see it getting teched into a bunch of different decks that just want that late game potential to hit for 120 on an EX without putting a 2-prize liability in the active spot. Just a very, very solid card all around. Again, I think it will most make sense in Arbok Wheezing as it currently stands. I think it's really going to give a nice boost to that deck. That and Mew EX is going to make the deck a lot more scary. So let's talk about the Marshadow. Marshadow just seems to be another 2-energy fighting type tool for any fighting type decks. Its attack says Revenge. Revenge is a very common attack style in the TCG. Does 40 damage plus 60 if one of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage during your opponent's last turn. Interesting interaction. It has to be damage. So if they knock out a Pokemon with a Greninja ping, or if they knock out a Pokemon with a poison tick, Revenge is not going to get activated. It has to be from damage. Either way, this just seems like another great tool to go into fighting type decks. You now have an option after something gets knocked out for another Pokemon to hit for 100 damage. So if you think about Primeape, Primeape can do 100 damage. Then getting into the second Primeape is usually pretty difficult because you have to somehow damage 2 of them. Usually not something you can pull off, but if you can go Primeape hitting for 100 into Marshadow hitting for 100 right after that, and then maybe pivot into one final EX, I think the route for any sort of Primeape, Marowak / Aerodactyl, whatever deck gets a lot better. You now have that early game Primeape, that mid-game Marshadow, and then that late-game big EX. You're going to force your opponent to knock out, well, to take 4 prizes, technically. So this is a no-brainer inclusion into any fighting decks. I just think the card is very, very good. 100 damage for 2 energy on the contingent that one of your Pokemon was knocked out. Very, very powerful. This Marshadow will see a lot of play. I think between the Aerodactyl and the Marshadow, fighting types are going to get a pretty big boost with this set. So expect to see more fighting decks. Don't really know what the best way to play it is, again, because we have so many new tools to try out, but we will definitely try to get to the bottom of it and find out what is the best way to play fighting type decks. Then we have this new Vaporeon card, 120 HP to retreat cost with the washout ability. As often as you like during your turn, you may move a water energy from one of your benched water Pokemon to your active water Pokemon. That, when it says as often as you like during your turn, that means you can move, if you have 10 water energy on the bench, you can move them all to your active spot in one turn. You don't have to wait. You don't need multiple Vaporeon. Vaporeon can just move the energy around as much as it wants. It also has the Wave Splash attack, a water and 2 colorless for 60, kind of pointless. Just really the ability we're looking at here. Now, after thinking about this card, it seems super good to me. If you use a Misty and the Misty goes a little bit overboard and gets you more energy than you need, that energy is now no longer stuck on that Pokemon. You can use the Vaporeon to move that energy off it and just redistribute your energy, make it make more sense for you. The best thing I can think of this Vaporeon as of right now is probably a 1/1 tech, or maybe a 1/2 tech into Starmie Articuno. Because what Starmie Articuno loves to do late game is to just start bouncing around. Keep your opponent from ever really knocking anything out through its mobility and putting up a fresh, new big EX attacker every single turn. And with the Vaporeon, you now no longer have to rely as heavily on the Misty Flips going well. Because obviously, let's say you're attacking with a Starmie and you have 2 Articuno on the bench. Well, you have to first get the 2 attachments onto the Starmie, and then you have to get 3 attachments on one of the Articuno to start attacking, and then 3 attachments on the other one if you ever want to use that one. Something that's probably not going to happen unless the Misty Flips go in your favor very, very well. But the Vaporeon is going to fix that. Vaporeon, you can attack with Starmie, free retreat into the Articuno. If you're attacking with Starmie, you already have the 2 energy. You can use the Vaporeon, switch those energies onto the active Articuno, attach once. Now you're swinging with a fresh Articuno. After that, maybe you pair it with the new Leaf Supporter or an XP just to keep 1 energy in play or all energy in play and pivot into that last Articuno. Now your opponent has taken 0 prizes and you've done 90 plus 80 plus 80 whatever the math is on that, 240 damage total. It just seems like it's going to be very, very strong in that deck, and it's not going to take up a lot of deck space. I mean, it's just a stage 1. It probably won't be too difficult to find, especially if you go for that 1-2 line. I'm very excited about this Vaporeon. I think it's going to bring an interesting element to the water type decks, going to improve their late game quite a bit with all that bouncing around you can do. Yeah, just a very good card overall, and something to look out for every single water card in the future. You know, can it benefit from Vaporeon? We already have to ask that question with Misty. So now we have Vaporeon to add to the conversation. We will just very quickly talk about this Dedenne. It has 60 HP, 1 retreat, and its Thundershock attack, it's just a Pinkerchin, whatever that stupid little sack is. Not Pukamuku, but horrible and awful, and I hate him. Whatever that guy does for 1 less energy and 20 less damage. Something for electric type decks to consider. It's not really ever going to fix the math. It might in some weird scenarios, but 10 damage is pretty light, and if it doesn't flip heads and paralyze your opponent, you're probably giving them a prize card. So it's something to consider. Might be good, might take the place of the sea urchin thing. I'm not totally sure, but again, something for the Pikachu players to think about. For our trainers, the first one we're looking at here is Leaf. During this turn, the retreat cost of your active Pokemon is 2 less. This has some very, very practical uses. I think this is a fantastic supporter card. This is going to make decks that want to put a wall in the active spot a lot better. A big problem when you are playing one of these wall decks is that at a certain point, your opponent controls the momentum because you're using this wall in order to build up something on the bench. You're not attaching to the wall or really doing anything with it besides sticking it in the active spot. Depending on how big the wall is or what point in the game you're at, your opponent might just have total control of the game's tempo because they know that you don't have a way to move that wall. And while you can't move that wall, they're just going to keep building things up on the bench. Another good use for this is going to be if you're playing a deck that attacks and they have a big retreat cost. The first one that comes to mind is Exeggcute EX. Exeggcute attacks for 1 energy but has 3 retreat cost. A very cool thing to do in the Exeggcute EX deck, I should know, I play it all the time, my most played card, is you like to bounce around between the Exeggcutors. Previously, to do that, you would have to attach to the active one and then rope in an X speed as well just to retreat. But with the Leaf, you can just play the Leaf down and retreat an Exeggutor that already has an energy attached. So I think that this is a very good pivot tool for these bigger retreat cost decks. I just think it's a great addition to the game. I don't think it's overpowered or anything like that. It's just something that's going to make certain decks flow a lot better. So very, very excited about this. I think it is a great addition. We'll see it in some decks, probably not in every deck. Not every deck needs to preserve energy like that or has big things to move, but it certainly will have some kind of impact. So next we're looking at Blue. This is the second supporter of 5, well, technically 5 trainers. I'm not sure it's going to be 5 supporters. But it's the second supporter that we have revealed, and it says during your opponent's next turn, all of your Pokemon take -10 damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. So again, this is a damage from attacks things. It's not gonna block Water Shuriken. It's not gonna block like poison damage or anything like that. It's only gonna block damage from attacks. This is interesting because it's a defensive style card, and typically in the Pokemon TCG, defensive style cards are much worse than their offensive counterparts. I heard someone say that they would have preferred this said take -20 damage. And honestly, I think I agree. I think -20 damage would have been much more impactful. Really, the only time I can ever see you trying to rope a blue in is if you're playing a deck that maybe the Pokemon has 100 HP and you want to prevent a Pikachu Giovanni from knocking you out or a Starmie Giovanni from knocking you out. And that's about it. There might be some other interactions that I'm not thinking of the math on the top of my head. It's going to be a tool that you have to consider every time you're building a deck. You're going to have to run through all the damage calcs in your head and say, okay, would a blue fit in here and will it win me more games consistently? So it's something to think about. I don't love that it's only -10. Like I was saying, I think -20 for a defensive card would have been much, much better because it really is, it's dependent on your opponent having a card as well, like that Giovanni. So I don't love it. I'm sure over the course of the game, it will win you some more games in some weird situations. But as far as consistently doing well in a deck, when we only have 20 slots in a deck, I'm not sure. I'm not totally convinced on it. I guess we'll see as we go further along, but this one's just kind of an eh for me. Next, we're going to talk about the cards that are just sort of there for now. We don't know quite their full evolution line, or just already don't seem too amazing. And first, we'll talk about this Magmar, which is probably the most not amazing, the best not amazing card we've seen. This Magmar does 80 damage for 2 fire energy, discard 2 fire energy from this Pokemon, 80 HP, 2 retreat cost. I think that this is going to be a no-brainer inclusion into Ninetales Rapidash decks. Ninetales Rapidash decks have kind of fallen off recently. I haven't seen much from them tournament-wise. They seemed very good at the start of the game, but lately they just haven't been doing as well. But this being a basic attacker that can do 110 with Blaine, 90 with Giovanni, seems pretty good. It's just another thing that you can include in that deck, another way to do a good amount of damage. They already play the regular Magmar as is, and that regular Magmar only does 50 damage. I think Ninetales Rapidash could very much so benefit from this Magmar card, so I think it's an auto-include in those decks. Even just one of them, maybe you don't have to go up to 2, but even just one is going to be good for the deck. So I like this card. Think it's just a buff to Ninetales Rapidash. Very cool. We also saw this Dhelmise, 100 HP, 2 retreat cost. Energy Whip does 20 damage if it has at least 3 extra grass energy attacks. This attack does 70 more damage. This is honestly why I could see them printing a Celebi Prime type card, because this Energy Whip, how are you ever getting 3 extra grass energy onto a Dhelmise? You're not. I'm telling you, you are never going to send up a Lilligant and get enough value out of that Lilligant for Dhelmise to do anything. As of right now, this is a very, very bad card, and I think it's the only card that has an attack like this that doesn't have some sort of energy acceleration in the form of a Pokemon or trainer card that isn't bad. So I could really, this kind of makes my Celebi Prime theory just a little bit stronger. I could see us getting a grass energy accelerant Celebi in this set. But as of right now, until we see what that Celebi EX does, I don't think that the Dhelmise is really anything to consider at all. You have to put 4 energy on this thing for it to just do 90. You would much rather have that energy literally anywhere else. So currently, as we stand with what we know, bad card. Strap in, because the Exeggutor addict gets to talk about a new Exeggcute card. I love it. So this has 50 HP. I would have liked to see it have 60 HP just as a buff over the one we already have. 1 retreat cost, and its attack growth spurt. Take a grass energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. Something I've been seeing. Yes, this will take a grass energy from the energy zone even if you don't play them in your deck. That's not a problem. It works the same way as Misty does in decks that don't play water energy. It's still going to take that energy out and attach it to the Exeggcute. Do I think this card is any good? No. I've seen the idea thrown around that now you can play Exeggutor in decks that don't even play grass energy. I'm telling you, number one, let's look at it from the perspective of playing Exeggutor EX as your main card, and you do play grass energy. Well, number one, you're not going to get any value out of the growth spurt attack as is. Number two, that 20 damage from the Exeggcute that the Exeggcute does, super impactful. Super, super impactful. When you go second, you want to get that 20 damage in with the Exeggcute. Missing it to get another energy is not going to be great. Now, maybe if you're playing a multiple type Exeggutor EX deck like Exeggutor Greninja, this could be okay if you go second, but either way, I still don't think that's a good strategy with the Exeggutor EX deck. So overall, for that, in a straight deck that's playing grass energy, the card's already bad. Now, could this give you the chance to play Exeggutor or Exeggutor EX in a deck that doesn't play grass? Yes, but this guy only has 50 HP. If you don't go second, you need to basically throw out the idea of using an Exeggutor EX. Any deck that the Exeggutor EX is going to be good into, this Exeggute's going to get knocked out after it uses Growth Spurt every time unless you go second. If you go second, it's okay, but if you go first, you're never getting into the Exeggutor. The only decks that are really going to let you do that are maybe something like Charizard, in which they will have a Moltres in the active spot, and they're not going to be looking to attack on their second turn, then you can do an Exeggcute EX. But Exeggcute EX is already not great against Charizard. It's not going to do you a whole lot of favors in that matchup. So overall, I think that this Exeggcute is just strictly a downgrade, which I'm surprised by. Usually when they have made a second version of any sort of card, it's been strictly an upgrade, like the Sing Jigglypuff or the whatever the Mankey is that damages itself, Reckless Charge or something. Usually it's just been a strict upgrade, but this Exeggcute I think is solely worse. I don't really see it having a lot of application anywhere. It's just too going second dependent, and either way, like Exeggcute EX is probably just best played with Grass Energy that you're gonna get no matter what, unless they release an Exeggutor with multiple there was an Exeggutor on the little pack art. So if they make an Exeggutor that needs 3 energy to attack, all right, well now it seems like it could be something. But that's only if we get an Exeggutor that takes multiple energy to attack and is better than the Exeggutor we have or the Exeggcute EX we have. So as of right now, bad Exeggcute card. If we get an Exeggutor that needs some more energy, like 3 or 4 energy to attack, then I could see it having a place. The last interesting card is half of a Pikachu. So Pikachu it has the same attack as Pikachu EX. It does 10 damage for each of your benched lightning Pokemon. So now your Pikachu can hit 30 damage. I'm sure this is just a straight upgrade over the regular Pikachu. Just having that 10 extra damage potential. Does Pikachu do 10 or 20? Either way, whatever the Pikachu does, this is just a strict upgrade to it. Never going to be too impactful, but it's there. And then the last things, you know, we have like this Larvesta, which means we're going to get a Volcarona. We have this Morlul, which means we're going to get a Shiinotic. And then we have this Snivy, which means we're going to get a Superior. We don't have anything to go off of. Honestly, the best thing I can say about any of these cards is that Larvesta has 80 HP, which is good for a basic, but 2 retreat cost, ew. And the Snivy has 70 HP. 1 retreat cost. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. 70 HP, always better than 60 HP in this game. So that is all of the cards. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what deck ideas you guys are cooking up in your head. I'm super excited to get into this format. I already don't even want to play Pokemon Pocket anymore until we get these new cards, because I've just built every deck possible. You know, I want the new cards. I want the new cards. So make sure you guys like and subscribe so you can see the new decks as they come out. I'm going to be building like a madman, and it's going to be a great time. So thanks for watching. Have a good one.